That the Cuba issue particularly close to your heart. But first, to our top story, Congresswoman, those 3 Texas Democrats testing positive for COVID while in D.C. I know that you're on the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis. When you see the photo of this sort of party plane full of Democrats who are fleeing their state so they don't have to do their job and actually vote on legislation, they're off to Washington to meet with some high-level federal officials. They don't have masks on, and now 3 of them have tested positive for the coronavirus, even though they were supposedly vaccinated. What do you say to that kind of behavior?
Look, obviously they think this is all fun and games, but the people of Texas elected them for a reason. That is to show up to work. You know, you don't run from a vote. You don't run from a debate. You go and show up in the chamber. You debate something on its merits, and then you take the vote. I mean, look, if I didn't show up every time I didn't like a bill they were proposing in Albany when I was a state legislature, I would have never been there. The reality is that they were elected to show up to present their views on particular pieces of legislation, debate things on their merit, and then, you know, take that vote. That's why they were elected. And I have to say, by the way, most people in this country, overwhelmingly majority of people in this country want voter ID. Okay, they want voter ID, and guess what? African Americans and Hispanics are leading in that group of people who want voter ID. So I don't know what they're running from. They should just show up and go to work.
You noted that you were a New York legislator prior to being elected to Congress. We just had that story about the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, being subjected to questioning regarding the sexual harassment charges that have been lodged against him. Where does this go from here, do you think?
Look, I think his political future could very well have been decided today. It's under oath, so, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that report. The Attorney General, who is also a Democrat, was the one who initiated that groundbreaking report related to the nursing home scandal that led to a bunch of people calling for the governor's resignation, including myself. These sexual harassment allegations are very serious, and many who have, you know, overwhelmingly Democrats and Republicans in the state legislature have called for the governor to resign already due to the nursing homes and the sexual harassment scandal. So it'll be interesting to see what this report says. What I will say is that I believe that we're going to elect Lee Zeldin as the next governor of the state of New York. I think that the governor is really outdoing his welcome here, attempting to run for a 4th term, just like his father did. Remember, his father ran for a 4th term, and Governor Pataki had come in and as somebody who had little name recognition, little money, and he defeated him because he had outstayed his welcome.
A lot of Americans are very concerned about censorship by big social media companies and tech giants. You say that you have fallen victim to that. You put out a tweet today. You say that Facebook blocked your video of a Cuban being beaten by regime forces and labeled it sensitive content. Let's see how sensitive the UN is about these human rights violations by one of its Human Rights Council members. That's ironic in and of itself. Cuba on the UN Human Rights Council.
You know, that just shows you what a farce that the UN Human Rights Council is. They have the most egregious violators sitting on that council. China, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba. And I agree with Gloria Estefan, as you reported earlier, who wants the United Nations to intervene. But, you know, if they're going to have these egregious players on their Human Rights Council, how can we trust them to do the right thing? That video that I had posted was of an individual being beaten by multiple regime forces. Okay, and you have Black Lives Matter, an organization here who claims to care about police brutality, and they have nothing to say. In fact, they actually only have praise to say toward the Cuban regime that does this to its own people. They are beating people. They are shooting at people. They are abducting people who are just simply going to the streets and saying that they want freedom. And the United Nations should be playing a major role in this. And every democracy around the world, with the United States of America leading the way, should be joining forces and pushing this regime to allow for these demonstrations to continue, to make sure that internet is allowed on the island so they can communicate with each other, and these videos can be shown around the world, and we should be standing with them, pushing for freedom.
Just a few seconds left, but in your view, has the Biden administration been forceful enough?
Absolutely not. They haven't been forceful enough. It took them a few days to admit that this was due to communism, which that in itself was something I think to applaud, that they finally acknowledged that. But they need to work with countries, our allies around the world, and particularly those like Brazil and Mexico that are neighboring countries, to put pressure on this regime. That's the only way. This is an opportunity for us as the leader of the free world to help liberate people who have suffered for 6 decades, including my family who resides in Cuba. And they are suffering tremendously. There's no food. They don't have access to aspirin, medicine, the basic necessities. They are just, they're craving freedom, and we should do everything we can as the leader of the free world to give it to them.
Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis of New York, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the migrant crisis